think there are so many concerns, it's difficult to sum them up very quickly, but the main problem is that medical cannabis should not be an illegal drug. It is a medicine that is of huge value to probably 2 million people in this country, obviously for people with epilepsy, but also people with pain, people with post-traumatic stress disorder, all sorts of really severe problems where medical cannabis transforms people's lives. And it should not be in these schedules. It should not be difficult for consultants to decide to prescribe and for trusts to pay for it. It's expensive because of the illegality problem. So there are layers and layers of problems, and the result of all of that is that doctors haven't been trained in medical cannabis. I mean, there are many different types of it, many different variants, the terpenes, the THC, proportions, and so on and so on. Doctors feel uncertain about it, and at the moment, only consultants can prescribe it as an unlicensed medicine, which means they have to take personal responsibility for that prescription. And for any doctor to do that when they don't really understand it is quite a big thing to do. So, there's a bit of me that understands the doctor's situation. There is training going on. More and more doctors are understanding it and are prescribing it in the private sector. But then behind the doctors, you've got the problem of the funding and the trusts. Because of the illegality, there's a high cost and the trust won't pay for it. So, at the end of the day, this has to be regarded as it is, as a medicine and not an illegal substance. It just shouldn't be seen like that. That's
Before the pandemic, the then Health Minister Sajid Javid made medicinal cannabis legal. We thought that would open the door, but we now know that since then, only 3 NHS prescriptions have been given to patients.
Yeah, well, that's right, because it's still in those schedules. It's still within the schedules for illegal drugs. Do you know what I mean? It just shouldn't be there. And he made one tiny step, but he's got to be bolder. So what I'm wanting the media to do is to put it to all these candidates for the prime ministership, say, right, are you going to deal with this absolute scandal around medical cannabis that very, very, very sick people are not being able to get it because you keep that in the illegal drugs schedules? Will you promise to take it out? Will you? That would be a great question to all these candidates when you get to interview them.
Rachel Rankmore, the Cardiff mum we've just been speaking about, told us that about a week ago she had a letter saying that Selexid 20, which her son's been on for around 2 years, would no longer be accessible because the MHRA was changing its import rules. The drug comes from Israel. We campaigned on Friday around that across the UK, and the MHRA responded by telling us that actually it was changing its policy so that it would be in place, that they would be accepting applications up until the end of the year for private prescription. Does that go far enough?
Nothing like far enough. I mean, what is good is that in their response, they have, I think, used the words that we know that medical cannabis helps people, right? I think I've got the words roughly right. That's the first time we've gotten MHRA recognizing publicly that they know medical cannabis helps you. I mean, it's glaringly obvious, but to have the MHRA recognize that, that's a very big thing. A 6-month stay, if you like, on the importation of a particular drug is very, very helpful, thank God. But of course, it's nothing like far enough. They've really got to deal with this issue. There are children costing the NHS 100, 200,000 a year, suffering unspeakably. I was talking to somebody, an adult, at a conference 2 days ago, who said, I've had 2 epileptic fits. It was dreadful, he said. The second one, I was in hospital for a week. 2 in his life. These children are having 80 a day of these things. Their lives are being smashed, and that's not an exaggeration. The family's life is being smashed, not an exaggeration. And the NHS funds are being smashed too, actually. So there's a huge win-win here for everybody. And they just need to get on with it, the politicians, they really do.
Let's look at the costing then. So a child is admitted after having these seizures. They have to stay there for a number of weeks. I'm sure that would run into possibly coming up to maybe hundreds of thousands.
I think so. I mean, I've never costed it, but we know what a hospital admission costs. And these people, children or whoever, they could be in hospital every week or 3 times a month. Alfie, the child I really know very well, was in hospital 3 times a month for days in intensive care. This is not just an ordinary hospital bed. The costs of that are huge, absolutely inordinate. So, you know, whoever is health secretary needs to grasp this one and save the NHS vast sums of money and actually do something morally right for the first time in this field, you know, for whatever it is, 50 years, 60 years. Yeah.
And that's opposed to £2,000 a month, the actual bill for using the medicinal cannabis. And that's on a private prescription. It could be a lot cheaper if it's brought in and bought in bulk.
Of course it could. I mean, that cost, which is massive for any family, but certainly for people on average incomes or below, terrifying. But it's all caused by all these regulations and restrictions and this and that, and therefore, you know, that the amounts of substance being imported are small because of the constraints and so on. So no, the cost could be tiny.